Now, I am Dustin Baker. We are here just 5 days before free agency. I will continue to say this to any newcomers. Legal tampering is really when the action starts. Don't let the name fool you. We are here with Ben Leber, a return guest, played for the Vikings. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Not bad at all. We have Josh Fry from Purple PTSD. He's our usual Wednesday guest. And then producer Tyler. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
Not bad. And you, Josh?
I'm doing good. Back for a second day in a row. It's a good week.
Yeah, let's see how close Ben's takes brush up against Paul Charchian's, because last time I had these, I had you two on in the same week 2 years ago, and you guys were in cahoots. It felt like. I want to see if you line up again. Okay. So with no further ado, my good man, I'm going to start with Cousins because that is the foremost offseason domino. It's just no other way around it. I want to ask you, your personal recommendation about the Cousins verdict. Do you want to see him back for a year or two? And then you can pivot into a prediction. Do you buy this Falcons smoke?
Well, that is exactly my sentiment, is that when there is smoke, there usually is fire. And Amen. Especially with all the talks that we know happen at the NFL Combine, all the talks that happen at the Senior Bowl that lead up to the Combine. Look, there's too many people and too many credible people out there nationally that all think this Kirk Cousins to Atlanta Falcons deal is going to get done, or seems like it's already done, or it's picking up steam. That steam is turned into smoke, and I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And so I think it's going to happen. I'm preparing mentally for it to happen. and there is a bit of excitement, I think, that comes with that as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Do you think that the purple team here would actually make a splash trade up the board if Cousins walks to the Falcons on draft night or before?
I don't think so. No? I really don't. I think that we have too many holes really to fill in this team. And again, we're talking about this before free agency starts. We are, we're in the kind of the top third when it comes to the NFL as far as being able to pay money and having cap space. And so I think there's going to be some flexibility there a little bit to sign some players. We all know that a lot of that's going to get sucked up by Justin Jefferson. But I think that we can at least be buyers this year, and we'll see how much of those holes we fill via free agency. I just think that we got to get young. We got to get younger. We got to get more athletic. I think that's going to happen more in the draft. And I think if you sacrifice this year's draft picks and future draft picks, that goes against that competitive rebuild that Kwesi keeps talking about.
Okay. Charts yesterday seemed to kind of settle on Michael Penix then, if they organically drafted a quarterback. Are you there too, or are you thinking prediction wise more Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy is there at 11? What do you got?
Those are the three guys I think that we're all, if we stay at 11, that'll be the three guys that we probably will be able to get to choose from, hopefully. I go back and forth. I think that I love Penix's arm ability. I like his ability to get down the field. I question a little bit of that accuracy at times, especially in the short and intermediate. I actually think this is a little nitpicking at skill set a little bit, but when he checks down and he throws the screen passes, he does a great job. And I know this is so silly, but he does a great job of actually leading his receivers in those situations. I mean, we've seen so many times, especially in the NFL, where if you don't time up that screen pass where they're catching it on the run before they have to gather their feet again, that's the difference between a home run and, a guy that gets tackled for a tackle for loss. He does a great job with that. I like so much of what Penix has gone through. The adversity. I know that there's a big story in The Athletic maybe about a month ago talking about, if you want to look at some of the success rates of these first-round draft picks, a lot of it comes down to how much adversity have they dealt with? How mentally tough are they? We talk about football IQ all the time. That does matter. I don't want to say that it doesn't matter, which it sounds like Penix has as well. It sounds like he's a very cerebral football IQ guy. But I do like this idea of finding a quarterback that has some grit. And I think of those those three guys that we mentioned, he comes with the most grit because of all his injury history, transferring teams, having to become a leader, and then leads this team to the national championship game. I mean, I like so many of the intangibles. I question a little bit of the accuracy. I question whether or not he is as good as McCarthy is throwing on the run. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a big part of the game now. You know, it's the biggest detriment to Kirk Cousins' game is getting outside the pocket, throwing on the run, being off platform, being creative. I think McCarthy shows more of that. And then if I'm going to just continue to expand here, Bo Nix to me is a guy that really is a poor man's version of JJ McCarthy. Mm-hmm. If you like JJ McCarthy, I don't see how you can't watch Bo Nix's film and not like Bo Nix. Then it comes down. Now, this is all stuff that we won't know. We won't know how they did in meetings. We won't know how they did on the chalkboard. We don't know their leadership EQ. We don't know that stuff. But if you're looking at just what these guys can do on the field, if you like McCarthy, then you have to like Bo Nix because they're basically the same type of player. You know, one's just much younger than the other one. I mean, McCarthy just turned 21 years old, which is a huge bonus. But I'm not going to disagree necessarily with Charge. If I had to rank them right now, it would probably be McCarthy, Penix, Bo Nix.
Awesome. So kind of getting back to the free agency talk here. Obviously, Danielle Hunter's another big name, and Kwesi kind of talked about him during his press conference at the Combine. But I kind of came away from that press conference feeling like they're a little bit less certain that a deal is going to get done than maybe they were in January. Do you think that Hunter's ultimately back in a Vikings uniform this year, or is he headed elsewhere?
You know, initially I didn't think if Kirk Cousins was your number one priority or JJ being number one, Kirk probably being number two. Danielle was definitely that number three guy on the list. And you look at his age, 30 years old. Do you really want to be the top buyer in that situation? I would say no. But again, it comes down to what the market's gonna dictate. If he gets some monster deal, and we're all gonna know here when the tampering period starts what those numbers sort of look like, and if he's gonna be paid like one of the top edge rushers, then I say no, we're out. I think the only saving grace for us is he has $15 million this year of dead money that is going to be attributed to his contract, whether he's here or not. So when it comes to an accounting purpose, if you're looking to save maybe some money in 2024, is there a way that you can sign him to an extension that's fair, chew up some of that $15 million in dead money, spread that over the next 2 years, and give yourself even a little bit more cap relief in year one? Again, I know it's kicking the can down the road because that $15 million, that $14.9 million is going to have to be paid no matter what. But if you can disperse that a little bit, smooth that out, maybe that's a lever they can pull to get him to sign. And maybe it doesn't really cost you that much money when it comes to the salary cap.
Okay.
Do you get anxiety at all about them needing 2 starting edge rushers if you are correct and Hunter walks?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, it does, because I've said for years that look, I think that we need to build this team from both offense and defensive lines out. And yeah, I think at this point in time we have a really dynamic vertical offense, and we can compete with anybody defensively. You know, I've always been D-line over cornerbacks, and I think that we're going to go backwards a little bit if we don't find an answer via free agency in the draft. And maybe, you know, maybe that's one of those things that they do. You know, I imagine they're going to have to address in the draft is defensive line, edge rusher. But again, with Wanham coming off an injury, he's a free agent, whether they sign him back for maybe a little bit of a discount because of said injury, and then you let Danielle walk, you really don't have much, guys.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to get real creative when it comes to third down.
There's two bits of evidence for the last 8 weeks that have kept me thinking that Hunter will return. And foremost, it's that he said a couple times since last summer that he wants to be a Viking. He said something to the effect of he's only had a purple jersey on since middle school. So when you start the negotiations there, I think that's advantageous. And then the cupboard is barren if Hunter walks, and you're tasked in an offseason where you probably need to find your quarterback. By the way, you need 2 edge rushers. And so to me, the evidence still suggests that Hunter will return, especially if Kirk goes to the Falcons, because you'll have that piggy bank freed up. But you in charge have made a compelling case, so I'm starting to get paranoid a little bit.
Well, no, the thing is, like, I think you make a great point, is that if you're in his situation and you know that you have a free agency coming up, why wouldn't you want to keep the team that you've been with for the last 9 years on the hook? You know, you want to say all the right things. As many teams as you can get into this pot to bid and get and say, so why wouldn't you say, like, and I love it here. I want to stay here. I want to retire a Viking. I want to continue to wear purple. Okay, let's keep them happy. Let's let them know that I want to be here. All the while, all these other teams that are looking for edge rushers, you want it to be known as well that, hey, I'm still a free agent. You know, I'll look at the best situation that makes sense for me. So it's smart by him. He also understands that if you guys let Kirk go, you'll have more money for me. And by the way, if you let me go, you have nobody else. I mean, so this is one of those rare situations where he's a free agent, but he's got a lot of leverage, especially if Kirk leaves.
I agree. The other, I think the last big offseason domino, because everybody on the show universally agrees that Jefferson will be extended. We've talked through our Cousins predictions, and then now Hunter. And per historic value, it's a giant dominoes, Harrison Smith. And I think the stakes there are either retirement, another pay cut, or, going to a Super Bowl contending team if the Vikings decide to, hey, we're going to Michael Penix. So in terms of Harrison Smith, where do you see that one? Is he going to be back for an age 35 season?
I don't think so. You talk about, again, saving money here and there, getting younger, all that other stuff. I mean, you look at the next 2 years that he has left on his contract. If they release him, now there is going to be some money that you're going to have to pay him. But when you total it all up, pluses and minuses, you're going to save $18 million if you release him in the next 2 years. And I think that, we all saw probably the same thing, that he just wasn't making a lot of plays in the last half of the season, or really probably the last, maybe 3/4 of the season. He wasn't making the splash plays that we're used to. Now, whether that's scheme, we don't really know. But I think with his age and where we've seen these other safeties just step in, these younger safeties step in because of scheme and play well, that why wouldn't you be able to do that with a younger safety, maybe an unproven safety, and say, look, maybe it's scheme over talent at this point in time. And you let a player like that go, which is going to hurt because he's meant so much to this organization for so long.
Yeah. I just want to ask about Lewis Cine here. If I recall correctly, you had sort of made an observation a while ago that Lewis Cine had just seemed kind of disconnected from the rest of the team. Do you foresee that he'll have some sort of role next season if the Vikings were to release Harrison Smith? Maybe not necessarily as a starter, but more as like an Andrew Sendejo type, your third safety can come in and, play physical style football. So, I mean, that's how I see it, but I'm curious to hear from you what your thoughts on Cine are heading into 2024.
Yeah, I really think that if they let Harrison go, they're going to have to rely on Lewis Cine. You have to. You've got no other choice. I mean, if you want to save whatever you can, some respect out of that selection, then you have to see what he can do in this scheme, in year 2 of this scheme. And yeah, I have noticed. I did notice during the course of the season, when he's inactive, whether he's inactive or not, the behavior and the body language on the sideline, there are times where he looks disconnected. He doesn't look like he really wants to be there. It doesn't look like he's having fun. It doesn't look like he's involved with the special teams as far as getting hyped up and dapping guys up, and kind of contrast that with Josh Metellus. Josh Metellus, even before he was Josh Metellus that we knew, he was the guy that stood out on the sideline as a guy that looked excited to be there. He's a young player that, is just trying to prove himself every single day. And he did it with leadership first and foremost. And then he did it on the field, and look what happened. He became one of the most important guys on our defense last year. And Lewis Cine, just body language looks like slumped shoulders, kind of mopes around. Nobody really talks to him. He doesn't really talk to anybody else. And so that to me is concerning, when he doesn't seem like he's even a part of the team, whether he's active or inactive. So along with that, if you let Harrison go, you've got to tap his shoulder and say, look, dude, year 2, we'll refine your role. If it's the mentals that right now, the X's and O's that are holding him back, because we all see a skill set that he's a very talented player, but whether or not he can put it together remains to be seen. Maybe they need to say, look, we're going to have you just play this particular role as a safety. Maybe Cam Bynum is your true strong safety. Metellus is our roving safety. And look, dude, all you got to do is just be the free safety. Be a true free safety. Use that big body, that length that you have, that range that you have. We're not asking you to blitz much. We're not asking you to come down in the box and fit the runs and be a hybrid linebacker. We're going to ask you to be a true free safety and take some things off his plate. Maybe that's his role. Maybe that's what he's best at. But I think that you got to find a way to get into his brain and make him a player. And if not, you got to chalk it up as a loss.
Yeah, I recall I went to training camp. I think it was not last offseason, but the offseason before. And I think Lewis Cine picked off Nick Mullins, running with the seconds. And just like everyone's reaction was just super positive. And it just seems like his teammates care about him. He doesn't come across as like, a locker room cancer. Like I see him and he just feels like an introverted character to begin with. So just playing devil's advocate, maybe he's just kind of quiet, and maybe he was just rehabbing from the injury still. He didn't have much of a role, so he wasn't doing much. I mean, is it possible that it's just that? I mean, maybe it's not as deep as it seems to be.
No, you could be exactly right. That's the thing. I don't know. I know a lot of introverted guys that played. I was even somewhat introverted. I mean, Kevin Williams obviously was introverted. EJ Henderson was introverted. But you know what? There's a body language that I think that does resonate, though. Even when you're introverted, there's a confidence that you walk around with, that you feel like you belong. And believe me, I've been injured. You feel like you are completely detached. You feel like a cancer on the team, not in a negative way, but you feel like people just want to avoid you. When guys get injured on the team, especially a big injury where you are completely away from the guys, meeting wise, practice wise, and you're doing just rehab, guys look at you as if you're contagious. And whether that's right or wrong, that's just the way it feels in the locker room. And I do think that there was a little bit of that he never really got to bond with some of these guys in a way because he was completely separated from the team. All that being said, I mean, I think the interception you're talking about, not to like keep spraying cold water on this dude, but the interception you're talking about, I think went somewhat viral amongst the Vikings social media because it's kind of a leaping, diving interception in the flat. And I got to be honest with you, Tyler. That wasn't a spectacular play. I mean, I know that it's an interception, but when you look at the scheme of the defense, that's where he's supposed to be. He's an inverted safety that's supposed to buzz out on that particular play. He did his job. That's all he did. He did his job. They threw the ball to a spot where he was running to anyway. So it wasn't like this incredible amount of instincts. It was like, hey, good for you. You did your job. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. So I want to see more of him. He's got he's got to break that that feeling that I have for me to like really think that he can be a consistent starter.
Ben Leber with the LeBron-like memory there
on scene. It's more of a Flores question, but as great as Flores is, I feel like, because I also happen to write for the Dolphins, and the perception of him there is like certain players would get, like Noah Igbenogany, for example, a cornerback that they drafted. He was kind of in Flores' doghouse. Like, it was a young player, you know, super athletic, just never really got his footing down. And it just didn't really work out. Flores didn't really like playing Igbenogany all that much. Do you see a situation where Lewis Cine is in the Brian Flores doghouse, or how do I put this? Is Flores, do you think he's, I guess, I don't want to, like, smart enough to understand that certain guys are going to respond to different styles of coaching? Or is, you know, Lewis Cine just going to, you know, kind of get a very hard style of coaching heading into year 3, where it's just, okay, we're going to put the pressure on your plate and hope you can deal with it?
You know, there is something to be said for some coaches just don't like certain players. You know, I don't know if in that situation, Noah just maybe wasn't as intelligent as Flores is asking him to be. I mean, that's the same thing with Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer came in, and there were certain players, especially carryover players, that he's like, I don't like him. I didn't like him maybe when they scouted him. I didn't like him when they were a free agent and we had to look at him on our staff. You go in with these preconceived notions and reputations, and you're like, I don't like the guy. And I don't know. It's human nature. We all do it. There's certain people you don't like. It could just be a quirky personality or whatever. I'm going to guess that we keep hearing, again, going back to where, like, there's little bits of smoke, there's little bits of information. Now, it could be misinformation, disinformation, I don't know. But we keep hearing that Lewis Cine can't pick up the playbook. Even when he first got here, it was like, look at this talented player. Why is he not seeing the field? And it's like, oh, well, it's a little slow to pick up the playbook. I'm telling you right now, the way that KOC runs his offense and the way that Flores runs his defense, they want smart players. They ask these guys to do a lot. Now, you talk to Harrison Smith and some of these guys about Flores' defense. It's not necessarily like verbally complex, but you have to be able to process a lot of information. They're going to call a certain style of blitz. Now, if you get a certain formation, you're going to check out of it. You're going to go to a different defense. There's a lot of double calls in his system. And if you can't process the double calls and then when you're supposed to run them or not run them, guess what? You're going to be in his doghouse, whether he's got a great personality or not. So I think that if he is in his doghouse, it's probably because he can't pick up the defense, and Flores doesn't have the patience to guide him along, because that's not his job. Your job as a professional is to know your stuff. Yeah, you can go and get help every once in a while. You can ask for help. You can have private meetings. You can do extra work. But I think people think that it's the coach's job to sit down with these guys privately all the time and break down film with them. When you become a professional, part of being a professional is doing your shit on your time. And if you can't do that, you're not going to make it in the NFL. You're just not.
Josh, you got one more quick one for Ben before we let him go?
Yeah, sticking with some of the depth guys on the roster. I asked the same question of Jeff Diamond a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it as well. Who's one guy on this roster right now, a depth player, whether it be somebody like a Mekhi Blackman, who kind of came on strong towards the end of the season, or maybe somebody even further down the depth chart, like a Jaquelin Roy or somebody like that? Who do you think is poised to make a big step forward in 2024 to really contribute to this team next season?
Oh, gosh, that's a really good question. I'm trying to like, maybe a guy like Patrick Jones or something like that.
Okay.
You know, I think that as much as we don't have, you know, we don't have the premier pass rushers, especially if Daniil goes. I really was impressed with some of our depth towards the end of the season and the amount of pressure they were able to get. Now, some of that was scheme, you know, they got maybe a free rush. They got an edge. They got an edge on an offensive lineman. But I really liked sort of our young developing pass rushing talent. It still has a ways to go, but I think that they've shown more promise than maybe some of our cornerbacks have. And so I would probably lean with those, lean towards those young edge rushers.
Excellent. All right, Ben, do we forget anything? Anything, Bernie, you got to get off your chest?
I don't think so.
No. All right,
you guys hit all the major points, man.
Well, yeah.
Well, you know what do you guys? I want to ask you guys this: if the price was right, would you bring back Marcus Davenport?
Yeah, that's why I think they pushed the deadline out, is because he's going to have to start at a bottom shelf, in my opinion, to reestablish himself. So I'm guessing that he can get got for $2 or $3 million. And so I know Twitter doesn't like him, but I would certainly do that for the value, because when he played, he was good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. That's my same sort of point, is just he didn't play a lot, but when he was on the field, he was really good for those 4 games. Like, he had 2 sacks, a couple QB hits in there too. So I mean, if it's like $1 or $2 million, something like that, then why not give it another shot?
As someone who is very, very critical of Marcus Davenport, even going as far to write an article about him on Daily Norseman, saying that, but basically my argument then was like, it was week 3. I think we were prepping for the Chargers, right? We were like 0-2, and Doogie did an interview with Davenport, in the locker room, and just like the way he conducted that, where he had his tongue sticking out, and like I was questioning his leadership and his willingness back in September to really be out there on the field. And at the time, Daily Norseman, like commenters on there, just called it a hit piece. Everyone hated it, and it was very divisive for the time, but all that aside, I don't think Davenport is someone you bring back and expect, okay, you're going to be our starting edge rusher alongside a Danielle Hunter or someone you draft. But as a third edge rusher, whenever he's available, that's a great talent. And you take that, on an affordable deal anytime. So, as a huge Davenport critic, I say go for it. If the price is right and the role fits what he's able to provide, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you guys say that, because he's a guy that we haven't talked about outside of them extending that deadline. And I agree, man. And here's the tough part is, I think his role is best served as a sub package, third down rusher, or whatever passing situations. But my God, you guys saw him against the run.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you saw him on rundowns. Nobody could block him. I mean, he was a monster in there on rundowns. So it's like,
he's so big.
He's so big and physical, So I get excited about watching him throw around tight ends and tackles, but I get it. Like, you got to limit his snaps and make him productive on just the passing downs. But yeah, if we can get him for a couple mil, why not, man? Bring him back, because so that'll give us a little bit of relief, especially if Danielle goes.
Yeah, I think that is the mindset when everybody lost their mind about pushing the deadline back. Everybody called it kicking the can down the road. I'm like, come on, people, let's have some intelligence.
Yeah.
All right, Ben, we'll hit you up here in the spring to see if you're available. Maybe we can chat post draft or so to evaluate the roster construction. Does that sound
good, guys.
All right.
Yep.
Well, you have a wonderful day, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, always, man. You too. Have a good one.
All right, later.